Well, here we are again with a third video in our series on the repair of the Super Air. It's progressing well, as you can see here. So stay tuned and see how we get to this point. I am trying to make these videos a little bit shorter, doing them a little bit more often. So anyway, give us your tips and ideas as you go along. Watch and enjoy. Well, now that we got this all enclosed, so we're all together, all around there, what we need to do now is to work out what we're going to do with regard to opening up the top and creating a hatch for the battery. We'll be using a 4S battery. There's down here in the bottom, the bulkhead comes down to, say, about there. And then, of course, you're going to have a wing back here. So let's say it sits in there something like that, so anywhere from all the way up to the firewall about there, and then room to go back a fair bit. So let's say we build a floor in there in that sort of area. The question is then, to get it in, where does the opening need to be? And what my thinking is, this is just a little voltage LED for a nitro plane to tell you whether the battery needs charging or not, which we don't need for what we're doing. So let's say I cut it right at the back of there, and we bring it down to this line here, this join here. So if we're sliding a battery in like that, okay, we're imagining where the floor would be down here where my thumb is, okay, where the opening would be up there where that LED thing is, okay, and then where the opening needs to come to up here on the top, on the front of this thing, okay. So where this mark is, you see that mark right there, that would certainly be plenty to get a battery in. Can go up to the firewall, so let's say that's about there, lined up with that opening. We've cleared the opening by quite a lot. We're clearing that mark there by quite a lot. Allows the battery to go down and in, and then be adjusted fore or aft. We've got access over the top of it for fastening straps, and so I think that's the plan, is to bring it up to someplace in here. And from the back of that, we've got a bulkhead right there. Okay, so that this mark is actually very close to where this bulkhead is. So we need to think about maybe we allow the bulkhead to be in here. That make that nice and solid, to leave the bulkhead attached to this front part. And then the part that we go in, we can have a piece of a new bulkhead in there with some pins that stick into the front to secure it. Comes down in the back, and then we have a screw or something to hold it down here in the back. Well, we've done a little bit of planning here, as in drawing a plan and drawing the plan on the plane. Isn't that nice? Okay. First off, we're thinking about the various components that we need. We need an 80 amp ESC, and so I'm thinking if there's a floor in right through here, that's quite ideal with regard to having our reinforcing panel in through here, and that panel having some knee braces up here onto the plywood thing that we're attaching it to there. So that's nice support through to here. Structurally, that's really solid, and that bit down there is just enough room for an ESC to sit in there, 80 amp for what we need. We need to think about the receiver, and if we have something like an AR630, then if the reinforcing panel comes down to this spot here, then there's plenty of room in there for an AR630. Might be we use a Lemon RX, which is longer, but if need be, a support farther up, it could come up. Given that we've going to use a stabilized receiver. It needs to generally go forward and back and to be level with the plane. The AR-630 could go on the side, but there's not really much of a room there. It could go back in here if need be, but I think up here is still going to be okay. So back to our plan here. So we've got a floor in there. So if the battery just happens to be fastened all the way up, there's the firewall there. If it happens to be all the way up to the firewall, it just fits in there beautifully. If the battery does need to be farther back, then we can add in a just a support rail for the battery that runs from up here someplace probably all the way up to the front there, so it could go anywhere from there to there, giving us a nice amount of travel. Just open space up above it. I like the idea of keeping the battery low and that we've got a low wing, and I'd like to keep the center of gravity as low as we can for aerobatic purposes. Keep everything centered with the wings and the weight. You know, it won't be entirely that way with all the fuselage up here, but keeping the battery down low is going to help that. Then comes a matter of access, and if we leave the this bulkhead here on the solid part there, and we open it up forward of that up there someplace, and if it comes up to let's say just short of this bulkhead right here, so it'll be a little bit shorter than that there, then going in this way, no problem as far as the front being shorter, but when this battery comes to hit the bottom corner down there, and as it's clearing that up there, this one would fit, but just barely. However, there's nothing to keep us from putting the battery in this way with lots of room up that way, lots of clearance, and then let it down and then strap it into place. So having an opening that is just that wide is going to do the job. Get it in there, get it down. The only thing that's going to be in this compartment is the battery, so the only thing we need to get at is get at the straps. We got a reasonably wide plane, so I think we'll be able to get our fingers in there okay to get the straps around the battery and fastened, and it'll sit in there wherever it has to sit. I'm guessing it'll need to be all the way forward and therefore be able to be at the very bottom, but time will tell. I'm not sure about that light thingy. Maybe it'll stay there. It's really epoxied in place pretty solid, but you never know. I might decide to carve it out and make it a little bit neater. Well, we continue to work on a plan. I had sort of laid out where the bulkheads are in the side of the plane, and of course we want a panel inside coming down through there. It's inside here, something like this, that will come down to the edge of this bulkhead, or not bulkhead, that platform there, servo platform. And we'll obviously have lightning holes in it and so forth, but we want to provide some strength through here because we're going to be cutting out a portion of the front for access to the battery. So anyway, with this panel coming down this way, ideally I'd like it to hit on this bulkhead that the wing is attached to provide strength there. But if I bring it all the way to that, then it's actually interfering a little bit with the wing. So I'm going to have to miss that by a little bit, and then probably put in just a little bit of a filler piece in there to attach that bulkhead better to that panel. So that'll work for that. Then I was planning on having another panel here, with this panel coming forward. It's got quite a bit of strength to come around and transfer the load onto this thing down here, and especially given that we're going to have landing gear on there and that's going to get reinforced. But nonetheless, I was thinking it would be good to have a panel here, and I was thinking I could put the ESC in there. And all of that seems to be good as far as being able to do that, but with this bulkhead here, that comes up 1 inch or so from the bottom, similar to this one back here. So there's not enough length for the ESC because that bulkhead gets in the way. So the ESC is going to have to either go on top of that or on the side, or something else. As far as our plans go, we'll probably have the battery compartment open up just behind this bulkhead. Now I'd like to locate where that is, and rather than just measure it, what I'm going to do is this. I've got these little tiny drill bits. It's teensy tiny. I've wrapped some tape around it to where I can fit it into an 8mm socket. And I think I'll be able to spin that and put a hole in right behind that bulkhead, close to the middle. Could just stick a pin through, but this is more exciting. Okay, that's through. So I can see that it comes in about 1 millimeter behind my line that I've drawn, my eyeballing line. 1 millimeter for an eyeball isn't too bad. Okay, so we have located our bulkhead. So I want to cut behind that. Well, I think a sheet of sandpaper will work. What I want is something to put a straight line across there. And we want to position it fore and aft to where it's equal. I think what I'll do is I'll tape it in place, and then if I have to make adjustments, I'll do that. Do our best to eyeball it for a start. Okay, now I'm going to measure back on each side. Okay, 145. 145. Okay, so that looks nice and straight. Pencil. Okay, so that'll be our line there. I'm planning on coming down to where this curved balsa ends, and we will also do one up there. Okay. Oh wow, right on our line. Okay. I'm always having second thoughts. I was going to come down into this thicker part here to give additional rigidity for the cover, but really what's most important is the plane itself has got strength. So to cut into that way down to here, I'm looking if I had a join coming along here where that's a cowl coming down with no strength. Look how narrow it is through there. That is not good. I'd really love to have that cowl be up here and allow all of that to be providing strength right up to that. So what if we went farther up here maybe? I need to come up with a mock-up somehow to actually try putting in the battery and so forth. Okay. I guess the floor for the battery doesn't have to go all the way forward. So if it only came up to here. Let's say it comes up to there. And we put this in, that gives us that tiny bit extra room to get forward. Looks to me like that would go in. And as far as going in this way, it looks like you just barely do it. I think we're going to go back to our original plan. We're going to leave the bulkheads in place for the plane. And if we have to make something to get the canopy to hold its shape, or the canopy, the, what do you call that, a cowl cover, to hold its shape, we will do that. Okay, so back to here, and that was right on, the hole was right on the line. Okay, so we'll angle it forward again and keep it the same on both sides, hopefully. $2.15. $2.15. How do you like that for an eyeball? Yeah. Okay. And so we proceeded with cutting out the top piece of the cowl. I've decided to use a hobby knife because I want to use the piece that I cut out for the actual cover. It's interesting, in a magazine that I just received online about our hobby, there was a larger plane that the fellow wanted to make an access hatch for, and he actually used fiberglass and carbon fiber to make a separate cover using the side of the plane to mold the shape. And the reason why he had to do that is because he decided to cut out the cover by destroying the cutout piece. And maybe that was required in that particular plane due to the thickness of the material and all of that, and certainly did a beautiful job. I mean, no complaints at all with the workmanship. But with what I'm doing here, we're able to actually utilize the piece that's been cut out to be the actual cover. That's going to be interesting. I think I should have angled it more that way. So maybe I'll instead have two clips, or maybe a hinge. Can hinge it to the side. Okay. At any rate, the question is, what about this? Oh yeah, easy to get it in like it is. That way, even from the, of course that won't be available. I'm working out the dimensions for the panel in the bottom here for the landing gear reinforcement. And I can't really get a scale in there. So what I've done is I started out with this piece of light cardstock without a bend in it. I put it in there, and then I used my scale to just push down on it to get it down into the corner. Then now what I've done is I've taken it, I've given it a hard fold with just something to be able to hold it in the middle to just have a look and see precisely if I've got it right. Okay, and it looks like it's probably 1 millimeter short, 1 to 1.5 millimeters short. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the length. And actually, let me just measure this here first. Okay, so that's 80, and I'd figured 81. So, got that about right. Okay, so now we're going to do this other one. So I put the card down in there to where it gets it right down in the one corner. And then I'm taking a rather stout scale and pushing it to make sure that it doesn't leave the edge over there. And get it down in there. Verifying the way that it's sitting looks good. Okay. And so measuring it like this. Oh boy, it's almost square. 80, 83, probably 83. So let's just do a hard fold on it, like what we did with the other one, just to be a little bit more precise. Get that down in there and see what that looks like. Okay, again, that's just, maybe a millimeter short. And that's 82 and a half. 83. 83 will do it. We're going to put epoxy on it, and it's okay to have a little bit of room for the epoxy in the corners. And there'll also be a bit of a radius down there. Okay, a bit of a question as to the direction of the grain. Recently here, I took a piece of this stuff and whacked it. Stuck it in the vise and whacked it. And yeah, you probably can't see that too well. But anyway, you can see there is wood with a grain in it on the inside. The grain is going opposite to the grain on the outside, which is what you'd expect for plywood. And notice the very thin layer of the veneer on the outsides. So the question is, which way is it stronger, this way or that way? The bits on the outside are going to be taking most of the strain, and it might be a better quality wood, but the stuff on the inside is a whole lot thicker. So the jury is out. One would hope it's roughly equal both ways. Certainly it's very rigid both ways. So anyway, what I've done with this one is at the bottom that's in there with the holes, I've got the grain going lengthwise, and so this one I've got the outside grain going side to side. Oh, you had to play around with this a little bit, shortening up the sides to get it to be able to fit in there, but it does now. So we're going to epoxy it in. It'd be easier to put it on here, but given I've got holes in the bottom, no sense wasting epoxy where there's nothing to glue it onto. So we've applied the epoxy to all of the surfaces. We now get the plane down on our grease or baking paper here. Get it to where everything's nice and straight. And then we got a weight that we're going to put on here. Okay. On the bottom, I'm expecting I'm going to be sanding just a little bit and in a couple of places. Okay. And then just giving it a bunch of extra weight at the start to help distribute the glue. And I'm just looking to make sure I got the plane propped up in the right place. Then this is allowing it to push down and everything. Okay, we will let that harden up, and then we can continue with the other panels inside. Well, the epoxy is now set. I've taken a sanding block and I've sanded the edge of this, giving it a bit of a rounding off, and especially coming down into here. So very, very pleased with that. That's looking very good, and I think that's going to be super solid down there for the landing gear. So the landing gear are going to go on. See, I got the front of it marked right there. Okay, so they're going to go on right about there. And what we need to do is to work out a nice square line. So I get that right on that mark. That's right on that mark. That's reasonably square. So I'm just going to put a small mark in the middle. And now what I want to do is to work out what's square. Well, we've got an interesting issue here. And that is that we've got two holes that suit a M5. And we got one hole that suits an M4. M5 doesn't go into it. So I think I'm going to, for the sake of consistency, I'm going to open this one up to be an M5, but these got a little bit of slop in them. M6 doesn't fit into it, so it's probably about a 5.5 mil hole. But this one I'm going to try to get quite snug to where it just barely fits in there, so I don't lose too much of the strength of the material there. So I'll end up having M5s all around. So with M5s, we're going to have a blind nut underneath there of that sort of size. So one there and one there and one there. Inside there'll probably be nothing there according to our current plan. And the current plan is that we put a, I haven't drawn it in there, but I'm thinking a panel across here that just sits on top of the bulkhead and finishes at the bulkhead. So the screws are going to be in this area in here. And this is too small of an area for the ESC to fit into, so the ESC is going to be on top. So no problem there at all. ESC cables are going to come down through here and up to the motor. So that should work. Okay, I've drilled a 5.5 millimeter hole in here. Put a blind nut on the back side of it. I'm using a chamfered head screw because the big hole is still a little bit bigger than the 5 mil bolt, which would give it a bit of play, but having the tapered sort of head on that is making sure that that's right in the middle. I've then marked on the fuselage the center there and there. Okay, so getting these guys both centered. Okay, I guess we're going to have to go offset a little bit and then measure back to them. Get a bit complicated here. That's going to be really critical. Okay, there we go. So we can get it right against the bottom. Okay, so given we can get it right against the bottom, then we can use our centerline marks. Okay, and boy is that close. No problem taxiing with that. Okay, that is precisely where we want it right there. There's bound to be some slight imperfections when we go to drill holes, but it doesn't hurt to start out with something that is pretty precise, and then if it needs adjusting later, it kind of get adjusted later. But yeah, that's spot on. Okay, so we'll take that off, we'll drill those holes, and that'll be all set to go. I just had another thought regarding technique and marking out these crosshatches for drilling. You recall when I was marking this one, the first line that I put on there, when I sighted it, I could see it was a little bit off center, and so I fattened it up to get it over to, get it in the middle. But I got thinking that if I drew a dot first, and by sighting it, made sure that that dot was right in the middle, then I can draw the crosshair line through that dot and pretty well get it spot on first go. So I've done that. I've drawn the dot, and we'll draw the crosshairs across, And of course, having those crosshairs is important because as you drill, the drill can tend to crawl one way or the other, and you can be watching it to make sure that drill is staying right in the center of those crosshairs. Now, another thought is that when you first drill, even though I'm going to end up with 5.5 millimeter holes, by drilling a pilot hole, again, you can make sure that you're closer to the middle. Now, if we were in a machine shop and we're drilling steel or something like that, there actually is an advantage to using the heavier drill in that it can't flex. It's going to be solid and you're going to be very precise, going in there. But when you're drilling through thin panels of wood, flex of the drill really isn't an issue. And given that the pilot hole is going to help guide, it's going to be good to have that pilot hole right in the middle that will help guide the big one through. Otherwise, when you have to use a lot more force pushing on the big one, and that gives it more opportunity to be crawling sideways because it's not going in there so quick. And also, wood does have a tendency to have hard and soft spots in the grain. Part of the grain is going to be hard and part of it's going to be soft, and that can tend to move the drill around. So it's good to have a pilot hole to start with. With this, I'm not necessarily pushing it all the way till the thing clicks, but I want a nice pilot hole, just an indentation right where we're going to start to help make sure that we're in the right spot. You can sort of push sideways, if you look at it and it's not quite there. Push sideways a little bit, and then after you get in the middle, get a little bit of rounding out to allow the drill to find something to follow, and that will also help it be more precise. Right in the middle. With the drill as well, you can get it to move across. If you start to go in, it looks like it's going the wrong way. Just push it a little bit to the side, get it a little bit sideways drilled, and then with pressure on it, just straighten it up, and that'll tend to move that hole over. By the way, I can verify that we've got solid wood through the whole thing where the hole is. So that's good for it to be able to clamp down and have something solid to clamp against as compared to places where there's these holes in the middle panel. Okay, so that's good there. Clean it up a bit. Okay. Now get our blind nuts in. With our blind nuts, sometimes it's a bit of an issue being able to hold on to them to get them into the hole. Just right now I'm just cleaning up a little bit of the ragged stuff on the end of the hole. Okay, sometimes it's hard in a place like this to get your hand in there to put the blind nut in, so stick it on something longer. Push it in and then unscrew the thing that you used to push it in with. Now we want to get these blind nuts seated and pulled in real tight. I don't want to go beating the thing to death with it all being on the plane. I just got them in there enough to get them started. But for seating them, what I'm going to use is a bolt that's got a flat bit on there, something that's got a hex head on it where I can really reef down on it good. And we're going to use those to get this thing seated. Trying to keep that thing right side up while we do that. Master of innovation. Okay, that allows me to hold it steady and nice and soft. We use the washers to help distribute the load and not damage the part. But just as importantly, we want to give a bearing surface something that can slide. head of the bolt can slide on to allow us to get it real tight without digging into something. So a washer allows it to do that. Okay, it's got that. Got some pretty tight tolerances here. Don't have to worry about this thing wiggling around. Yeah, look at that. Without anything tight at all, it hardly has any movement. So that's good. Had myself worried there for a minute. I thought I was outside of that tolerance. And feeling underneath for when that blind nut is flush against the wood, and give it a little bit extra. You notice I'm holding the spanner or the ratchet with just a little bit. If you have a great big bolt, then you go from the outside, but on little tiny things going into lightweight plywood, definitely go easy on the torque, and the way to make sure you go easy is don't grab a hold of the wrench out on the end. Get it in close in, and that'll help you to regulate that tension or that torque to be something that's suited to what you're working with. Okay, that is going to be very, very suitable. And if we have a look inside, we'll see those are all nice and seated in there now. And that's going to work good. Of course, we won't have long bolts in there when we do it. That back one could probably go a tiny bit tighter. Yeah, that's more like it. The other thing that will happen is that these things, as you have landings that yank on this thing, they're going to tend to pull those blind nuts in tighter, and these things can loosen up. So it'll be something that you want to check from time to time. But that's going to be a nice solid landing gear. Triple panel of plywood in there, the middle panel having holes in it, but that's okay. The outside panels are going to give most of the strength. And we got grain on the outside going this way, major grain going that way, and this one another layer going that way, and this panel grain going that way, then that way, then that way. The next panel inside, opposite, opposite, opposite. So you got all those crisscross grains in there, every one perpendicular to the other, to add a lot of strength and rigidity. Okay. You can see the blind nuts haven't quite come up to the surface there, so that's fine. They're going to be able to hold very, very well. And landing gear. Okay, so now we want to think about these panels. Okay, so we want a panel from there to there. We want full width. So up here it's about 82. Down there it's about 79. Inside there, who knows? I don't have the tool for, or the measuring tool for reaching inside and getting that width, but yeah, we're going to start with 80. When lacking measuring tools, improvise. It's about a ½ a millimeter short. That's 78, so we'll start out at 79 at this end. So that, well, this other end is up where I can measure it. Call it 81. It might be a smidgen less than that. And lengthwise, it's another difficult measurement. I guess it depends. Are we going to set it on top of that? I guess we could. That gives us a little bit of leeway if we have it on top. So 102, that's what it bent. And where's it coming to? Yeah, as high as we can get it and staying inside this. Okay, so we'll start out with 102. That gives us about 3 or 4 mils leeway down here. Okay, for this we're going to go with a lightweight plywood. We just want to add rigidity. We don't want to add a lot of weight. Well, we've completed our panel. Got lightning holes in there. We tried to work out to where it had even gaps, between these. The main thing we're after is giving stiffness and rigidity and trying to keep the weight down. So I think that's a pretty good thing. It's tapered a little bit where it's narrower down here and wider up there. So I started out by cutting the full width, and then I use a technique where I put it into the saw against the fence, get the blade up next to it, sight down here, move it out that 1 millimeter that needed to go that way, run that there, turn it over this way, do the same sort of thing on the fence, get the saw blade towards just zinging against the edge there, get the blade out of the way, move it 1 millimeter to the left, bring the saw up again, cut it again, and hey, the first cut, and it was just perfect. Didn't have to do anything more. So, as you look at it here, we'll be able to get that pretty well right up to this piece here. So as we look at it here, there's just the tiniest gap up here. I want to get it right up flush with that edge there. And then we just have the tiniest gap in there. So I think just a fillet of epoxy might do it. Key thing is we've got, well, I guess we really want it supported all across there, because that structural member, it's like a piece of angle iron, where you got the two pieces together and one is supporting the other, keep it from wiggling. So we might have to add a little bit of balsa or something to help just complete that join, probably on the other side. We won't worry about these little gaps here. That's fine. It's fastened on the edge, fastened across there and all along here. Well, along most of there, got a little bit of a gap in there. But yeah, so we're going to epoxy that in place. Eventually we'll have some more work to do in here, putting a panel across there. And actually that panel coming across there can help connect to that. Okay, so actually we'll do that next. Just from here to there. And I'm questioning whether I want to bring it all the way to the sides. Structurally, it's probably a good thing. Just add a tiny bit of weight to do that. So we'll bring this all the way to the sides and notch it around this and have it come right up to this new piece that we're putting in there. So we'll wait on the epoxying that until we get this piece ready, to where we know we got them both ready to go. Yeah, that's going to be a little bit tricky as far as clamping goes. Okay, I guess it'll basically be clamped from the sides, and that's going to hold that in place. When that clamped on the sides, I can then put this piece in, and that piece I'll just weight down. Can't really do much as far as clamping from the sides. They're not going to flex, so we'll just put weight down on it to get a good compression onto these bulkhead panels. Okay, so let's measure up this middle bit. Okay, 81, 80. I'm going to go from there to there. And that looks like 91. We've got the basic shape cut out for our piece. Mark the front. Haven't put the holes in yet, or focusing on what we got going here. It can be a bit tricky when it doesn't quite fit all of the way to figure out what is it that's holding it out. A second ago it didn't fit in there without any adjustments. And we got a little bit of a gap on the sides. Yeah, interesting. So I'm just looking at that there. Just a little bit of a gap on the two sides that I would have preferred not to have. I kept sanding at it because it wouldn't go down in. It was kind of hard to figure out what it was that was holding it up. But down well on the bulkheads. Yeah, no, it isn't. Okay, it's got a radius there that's holding it up. Okay, inside there, you can see the piece that I'm putting in, and you can see there's a bit of a radius on the end of the bulkhead that's holding it up. So I've got to take, relieve a little bit there. This one I allowed plenty of extra because I knew I needed to clear those radiuses and get that down there. And looking at it in this way, that looks like that's down nicely. So that's down, no problem. Okay. So I got to get this other end down, and that will just require relieving the width of that front bit a little bit. And essentially there's little bits of glue that are hanging it up here and there, and the very rough edges, that's where it got busted out and we epoxied the thing back in. So I just need to skinny it up. So essentially there's some rough stuff on the bulkheads where it got epoxied in there that it was catching on. And then the last thing is just that radius on the end. So we'll clean that up a little bit. Well, we've now got it in place to where it's down solid against both bulkheads there. And in thinking about it, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to epoxy the front and the back of this, and then after that's all done, I'm going to just zap in a couple of very small pieces of balsa along the sides because of that gap there. No sense having a ton of epoxy in there when it's not really needed. So I'll just have a little stringer set of piece on each side to just help support the sides, and that's going to be fine. So we'll drill the holes in that, and then we'll have these two panels ready to epoxy in place. Two beautiful panels ready to go. Yep, very happy with that. So in there and in there. Well, everything is epoxied in place now. I ended up taking just a little tiny piece of glass cloth to join the two pieces together there in the middle. We've got everything down here looking pretty good. I've got the clamp holding that piece in. Seems that the stuff is staying pretty well leveled out, not dripping too much. Okay. I'm just letting the its own weight hold that down. I don't think that really needs anything else. I guess I put this can of stuff on there, but we'll let that harden up and then get to the next step. While that's hardening up, I'm just going to go ahead and patch this hole where this thing was. What I'm going to do is do some thick balsa in there, and then I'll sand it to the contour of the rest of it. Be nice if this side was a little bit straighter. So I've carved out a little piece of wood. I've left a little lip on each side so it can't get pushed in too far. We'll use a bit of filling and stuff around this. We got a hole and some little gaps and stuff. We'll use our medium CA, that's a gap filler. Okay, and that can get touched up later as required. Well, I'm coming to recognize that I need to do these updates a little bit more frequently. So we're going to call it quits for today. Of course, to be continued. But boy, it's progressing well. We've got a nice little hatch ready to get reinforced and put in there. I think what we'll have to do is to measure with calipers the width and set up a bit of a jig to hold it at the right width. And then we can make some bulkheads to go inside it to hold it solid. And I haven't decided whether to use some sort of hinge on one side, then what sort of latch. So we'll give that some thought before we go the next round. Put a nice little plug-in up here at the top and got that all finished off nicely. I haven't done any of the balsa filler yet, but got those things nicely in place. Let's see what else has happened. We've got all of our little internal panels in there. So we've got the reinforcing bit coming down to here. We're trying to strengthen this area through here, realizing that take that out as far as strength is concerned. And so we want a nice strong area through here. So that's what this is about, is adding to that strength through there. It's epoxied up here against this platform. It's epoxied down into the corners down here, and then there's a bit of fiberglass to join it to the next thing. And that next panel in there is epoxied down to the bulkheads on both ends. And we haven't yet done it, but we're going to put some little stringers along the side to fasten it to the sides. We've got our triple plywood panel in here. The middle panel has got holes in it, and then the outer two panels are thicker and they're solid. And we've got the blind nuts in there to handle the landing gear, and we've got that all lined up to where they're nice and square. So yeah, very much pleased with it. So make sure that you've subscribed. That will allow you to keep track of what we're doing with this. And keep watching. Give us your own tips and things and ideas as to what we're doing here, and we can incorporate them as we go. So you enjoy your flying and have a great day. I'm RC Jim signing off.